keynote coming up from Tiziana Bianco, who is the Head of Product and Solutions at Visa. By the end of this, you will call her Tiz, as most of her colleagues and friends do. She's been a transformational leader with over 15 years' experience developing and launching business operations, new product solutions and services globally. Prior to Visa, Tiz was the General Manager of New Markets for Zip, where she helped the FinTech expand globally into 13 markets. We're going to talk about innovating towards a frictionless experience while safeguarding your customers. A bit more of that road coming up. Please put your hands together and welcome Tiz to the stage.
Good morning, everyone. I know I'm standing between you and lunch, so hopefully there's some engaging content here. I want to start off by saying thank you to FinTech Australia for getting us all here. It has been an absolute pleasure to catch up with colleagues previously that I used to work with, meet clients and partners that we work with today, and I look forward to meeting more of you over the course of the next 2 days. My role here today is really to do two things with you, if I may. The first one is I'm going to take you through a bit of a tour on what are some of the trends that we're seeing globally, regionally and locally, and what does that mean to the future of payments, and what does that mean to every single one of us in the room? Whether you're a bank, a fintech, government, regulator, a seller, a merchant, or a technology player, these changes are having fundamental shifts, and I think it's important that we all understand where those shifts are and how we can adjust our roadmaps and our strategies accordingly. And my second aim is really to provide you with some insights on how Visa's leaning into this and how you can actually leverage some of the stuff that we have so that you can capitalize on those opportunities. And now I'm looking around for the clicker, which I don't see. Sorry. That's okay? Okay, there's another one coming up. Perfect. Okay. You would have just heard from the panel, and I think the last comment that Ross made is that we are living in unprecedented change. And I think it doesn't matter how many conferences and forums you have gone to, you've probably heard that comment. And it still holds true. We are not slowing down, things are not plateauing, it's not decreasing. Actually, the acceleration of change is increasing, and that has been even more true when it comes to payments. This slide very quickly is to let you know that we have some really good lawyers, and also to tell you that everything that I speak about today is not to be taken into consideration for your financial planning or your portfolios. It's illustrative in nature, and please don't see it as advice. We believe that the payments ecosystem or landscape has changed more in the last 5 years than it has in the last 50. That's a pretty big call, and we think we just heard from the panel, for those of you that were here, that how are we designing a digital economy? And I think over the last 5 years, we can claim that we're finally here when it comes to the digital era. Previous to that, we were very much analog, and we were ushering people into the digital economy. And now we're finally designing, by default, digital experiences and digital infrastructure. However, because of this huge change that I just talked about, it's become more complex. And the reason for that complexity is a number of different trends and factors, and today I want to take us through 3 of them. The first one is that when you look at payments, technology has really blurred what a payment is and what a payment isn't, and what does that mean and what impact does it have. The second one is that there's an entire new, very different group of customers that we've never seen before, and what impact do they have and what do we need to consider when we're building and shipping product. And the last one, and I think we spoke about this throughout the morning, is very much that although security and trust is at the core of every payment ecosystem and infrastructure, it has never been more challenged. And if we look at AI, it's only accelerating that challenge and making it even more difficult. So let's dive right in. We perceive payments to be blurred. Oh, sorry, let me go back. I think that was supposed to be illustrative. What I mean by that is payments used to be very simple. It was the job that you had to do. It was the job to be done. Now it is so much in the background that people don't even give it a second thought. We know that payments are happening on devices and platforms that are not proprietary to where they originally were when you were doing a payment. So we need to meet people where they already are consuming or doing that particular activity. And the payment component of that, I don't know why this is blank, sorry. The payment component of that is very much not the problem of the consumer or the person who's using it. I'm not a big fan of animation, but let's see if this works while I'm speaking. Words that you will see on here. Payment previously before, as we know, was auth, settlement, and clearing. It is now fraud prevention. It is payouts. It is loyalty programs. It is personalization. It is experiences that extend themselves far beyond the proprietary platforms that we're looking at. It's cryptocurrency. The list goes on and on and on and on. If we look at the evolution, and we spoke a little bit about this morning as well from the different panelists, at the top you will see that the journey that we are taking you on here is really the journey of money. And what does that mean in terms of coins? Well, we started with bartering, right? We had a cow, you wanted to trade that cow for some oranges, and then we've moved into coins, we then into paper-based, we went into plastic, and now we know it's actually a credential. And if you look at the bottom, that's actually supposed to be the journey of identity. And so it started with jewelry, then you had a family name, we then had passports, driver's licenses, et cetera, and now we know that they're converging. And effectively, ID and payments are the two sides of the same coin. And this is important for all of us in this room who are looking to get into payments or are looking to see payments as part of our core proposition, because we really need to understand that we need to be designing and building and shipping product in a completely different way, in a way that is secure but also seamless and transparent and allows consumers to do what it is that they were going to be doing in the first place, with payments not necessarily being that core job. I'm not sure why these slides are not coming up, but the second big trend, and this is supposed to say that our consumers of tomorrow are consumers that we have never seen before. And of course, who am I talking about? Digital natives, Gen Z, Gen Zers, whichever way we want to say that term. But effectively, these are people who were born in 1996 to 2012. Many of them are still in school age, but surprisingly, they're about 1/5 of the Australian population. They're approximately between 30 and 32% of the entire global population, and believe it or not, in 2025, they will make up 27% of our workforce. That is a staggering number, given, as I mentioned, more than half of them are still school-aged. And they're digital natives. What does that mean? They literally grew up with digital and technology at their fingertips. They didn't have to learn it the way that we did in our 20s, 30s, and 40s. They physically do not know what the world was like before that, and as we design buying and selling and how to get paid and how to pay experiences, we need to keep this front of mind. An example that is really front of mind is kind of surcharging, right? You know, you say now, well, if you use some sort of digital identity instead of or digital payment instead of cash, there's a surcharge. Guess what? These Gen Zs never use cash, so they feel a bit taken back when they're getting a surcharge for something that they don't believe there's an alternative option to use. 91% of them in the last 6 months have made an in-app purchase in a gaming in-app purchase. 91% in the last 6 months, which is huge. Again, many of us in the room, and I'm not trying to be ageist, but many of us in the room have had to learn how to make an in-app purchase. For them, it's completely the baseline, and it's what they do on their everyday. And their shopping habits and the way that they look at the future of work is also different. Their shopping habits are unique again for this segment. We kind of see them as they do a lot of research online, but majority of them actually go in and do click and collect or go into a physical store to try on, look at different sizes, look at different colors, and then make the purchase. So it is a combination of online and offline. This is super important because we know that this particular cohort is going to be majority of the driving growth in e-commerce and retail spend globally. They're going to be accountable for 4.4 trillion. And in Australia, they're actually going to be accountable for 48% of all the retail growth between now and 2030. And they also see themselves being savvy. They're huge researchers. They not only ask people what they think and they go on social media and read reviews, but they'll do a ton of research on the product, the service, and solution before they actually go out and buy it and make a decision. 2/3 of them, in fact, actually do research online where they're even in the stores. And they have an entrepreneurial mindset. I think this is very positive, but it's also very high percentage. I believe it's 82% of them desire to be entrepreneurs. I think if they spoke to many people in the room and they knew how hard it was and how much effort is required, they might change their mind, but this is their desire. 83 of them already have an alternative income stream or a side hustle. And 64 of them know that they will have multiple domains in terms of their career as they move forward. And this is not just like multiple jobs within the same domain. This is like uniquely different domains and areas of understanding. And the third trend I wanted to talk about was really the security. We've covered this a couple of times this morning, but this was really kind of Visa back when we were founded and now. When we were founded, we were largely analog, I've already mentioned this, and now we are largely digital and plastic is no more, and we're pretty much a credential. This is important for a number of reasons. We, as a collective ecosystem, have really protected ourselves against scams and fraud for a number of decades. And I think we have all invested significantly in this, and we have done well to some degree. However, in this new era, there's a whole bunch of new reasons as well as new technology that makes this an arms race. And what I mean an arms race is between us as the ecosystem protectors and obviously those that are bad actors. On this left-hand side, or my left-hand side, you'll see that these are AI technologies that perhaps we know and we've used for really positive things. But we have also heard the example of an employee, I think in Hong Kong, who managed to get duped by a deep fake and transferred millions of dollars internally when he thought he was actually speaking to someone within his organization. But there's actually these other ones of which you can't see the name, but the first one is a worm GTP, which essentially is something that you can buy on the dark web, and it goes in and actually helps hackers be better hackers in a programmatic way. The second one is fraud GTP. Again, you can buy this on the dark web. It's a SaaS model. It's $200 a month, and this actually helps put in cyber attacks. And the third one, the dark BERT, again, this is also using AI, but this also supports looking for privacy data on the dark web so that bad hackers can actually attempt to steal your identity. This is very concerning, and it's concerning for a number of reasons. It's concerning because previously, a lot of it was analog, as I mentioned. They would skim accounts, they would sell those numbers on the dark web. We closed those down through different legal measures. However, this means that these are now organized crime. Believe it or not, many of these have an HR department. They're organizations that have employee handbooks, there's promotions, there's bonuses that they're giving their employees, and these are a lot more organized with technology and funding that is able to have more of an impact. If cybercrime were a country, you've probably heard this before, it'd be the third largest economy. It's a $99.5 trillion economy. $1,000 that is accepted on e-com merchants in Australia Pacific, unfortunately 36 of that turns into fraud. And right here in Australia, we are the second largest when it comes to remuneration attacks or bin attacks. So this is not happening elsewhere, it's actually happening right here on shore. And the overall message to this is really, we need to collectively continue to invest in this. I know that many of us in the room, including us as Visa, continue to lean in and invest, and this is not an initiative, it's not something that's just going to go away, but a continued investment and collectively to protect our ecosystem. So the real question that I've been asked to answer is, how do we as a payments industry balance the experience whilst protecting fraud? And there's a ton of examples where we would have real-time payments going through, and more we're kind of seeing what I would call road bumps, or ways to really kind of slow that down, or where we're placing more friction in the customer experience so that we can ensure that it isn't fraudulent. And there's positives to that, but there's also negatives, and the balance is what we need to get right. So I'm going to speak to you about 4 innovations or products that we are bringing to market. Some of them are not new, but we need more effort, and then the others are. So the first one's tokens and tokenization. This is really the bedrock of really protecting all of our payments infrastructure. We ticked over 50% of tokenization in AP in March of this year at Australia Pacific, which is a huge milestone, but we still have another 50% to go. And in this market in New Zealand, it is slightly over 50% to go, and it is something that we know has long-standing benefits. The second one I want to speak to you about is passkey. I'm very excited about this. I feel like it's that last mile of really binding your ID with your payment online from a payment perspective. The third one is click to pay. For those of you who've run on payments for a long time, which I think is many of you, this was called a number of different things. I'm here to debunk some of the myths. I'm very bullish that this is going to have a long impact and actually change our customer experience again online. And the last one, probably my most favorite, is the flexible credential. So tokens, 1 billion, as I mentioned, has been issued across Asia Pacific in March of this year. The results speak for themselves. I'm not going to read that off the slide. If you want to know more, please speak to us. This is really, as I mentioned, the bedrock of the protection of online. Essentially, think of it, if you steal an armored truck full of cash and they are all tokenized bills, it doesn't matter because all of that information cannot actually be used or leveraged. It's super important for us to tokenize and essentially scramble our information. Passkey, as I mentioned, is very exciting. So think of this where you're finally binding your biometric profile to your device. We are using as Visa the open services or open standards that are currently on your device. And effectively, you set it up. There's two things you need to do. You set it up and then you use it. And what I mean by you set it up, we've all done this before, where you just use your phone to look at your face and be able to capture that information. And then it binds and creates two keys. One stays on your phone, one goes to Visa. And when you're looking to make a payment, which I think we show in the next video, that's when you're ready to use it. And when you look to make a payment, our very first experience of this is going to be click to pay. So we've got Alex. She's going to buy a chair. She decides that she wants to use it on her device and buy it on her device, so she uses click to pay. It's verifying her by just looking at her face, because again, she originally set that up. It's authenticated. She selects her cards, and away she goes. And so it's really binding that last mile when it comes to actually telling everyone that the payment and the person is legitimate. I do want to spend a couple of seconds on click to pay for a second. I think for those, like I said, that have been around for a while, have known that we have tried to roll this out as an industry standard for some time. The big difference now with click to pay is that it is a card level feature. Now, what does that mean? That means that we are working with banks all over the world and issuers to ensure that they are auto-enrolling all of their customers. So when you get your new card or your existing card and you go to try it at a merchant, it will automatically load the cards that you have in your digital wallet so that you can use and you can select and seamlessly check out. So the way that we have essentially done tap and go on the physical terminals, we're now doing consistently online. And previously, this was or even today, it's a very inconsistent experience depending on what merchant you go to. You sometimes have to do a step up, you sometimes have to do an OTP, you sometimes have to get your card and physically type it in. It is now going to be completely consistent across all of our merchants, and it's a very exciting, seamless experience, particularly in the wave of shopping going online. And last one, the one that I'm probably most excited about, for those of you who knew me when I was at CBA, I think I said this then, and I'll say it again. I don't think anybody wakes up in the morning and says to themselves, I need a new financial services product. I really don't think that that's how consumers operate. Us bankers and those in the industry might think so. But the reality is that we just want to be able, as consumers and businesses, to make payments at the right time, to the right place, using the right currency, and being able to kind of income smooth as we get paid and what makes sense to our business. And so we have launched the Flex Credential, which is essentially a single unified digital credential that can be plugged into a number of different funding sources. The best way to describe that is through an example. And I'll click all these through, and then I'll let you know. So Tiziana wakes up one day and she realizes, it would be great if I could just pay for some things using my own money, pay for some things using installments, pay for some things using points that I already have, that I've earned, and burn them, and then paying some things using credit. And now this is exactly what it does. It allows you to set rules. It takes funding from different sources that you have. As you graduate, perhaps as a teenager, you don't have credit, but then you become a gradult, I think the term is, and then you become someone who's in the workforce. And effectively, this credential just follows you for life. It adds things, and it works through, and the analytics behind it can also say, people like Tiziana are using these funding sources for these payments. Would you like to trial it? It's not a set and forget. You can change it, but ultimately, it also allows you to be more in control with just using one credential, and you don't have to pick different cards or go through and figure out if that happens to have a loyalty program or whether you can earn and burn on this particular merchant or not. Huge utility. We're very excited about this. We are live in Japan with one of the largest banks. We've just had someone else sign up in Vietnam, and we are open for discussion here in Australia and New Zealand. So in closing, I don't know why these slides are really dark. We should really have tried them before we got up here. But there is one more thing I wanted to talk about, because it'd be dismissive of me to just talk about cards. And what this is why should we stop here on cards? We've had many, many, many years and over 2 million transactions that we see on an annual basis when it comes to actually understanding fraud on cards. And so a few people thought, well, why don't we use this experience, this expertise, and everything that we've learned on cards and apply it to non-card? And so we did just that. We spoke with a number of real-time payment networks around the world. We took our intelligence and 70 years of experience, and we ran a pilot in the UK with 8 of the largest banks, about 50% of all the payment volume that was going on A to A. And essentially for that pilot, we were able to identify over 60% of fraud that was not detected by the banks previously. So they essentially gave us 6 months of the data that they had already used and analyzed. We know there's about 64 RTP systems around the world that are very active and growing, and we know that this is a growing problem. So we believe that this is not only has utility, but actually will safeguard our customers as A to A grows, and we absolutely want A to A to grow. We know that real-time payments is a huge benefit for our economy. So we would like to support and make sure that we use our capabilities and our learnings to really do so. And we are running a pilot right here in Australia as well with a number of our financial institutions. And again, if you'd like to get involved, please let us know. We're happy to have a discussion. We're also doing one in New Zealand. And I think there's a little demo of what that looks like. And this is what I was mentioning earlier. I personal, example of one or sample of one. I was sending money from one of my accounts to another one of my accounts, both mine, but I hadn't sent that much money between those accounts in some time. And I assumed that was going to be real time, and I actually was receiving a step up. One message that said, "Are you sure? Like, is this the right person? Is this the right amount? Like, are you sure you want to send this money?" Which kind of freaked me out, but then I said yes. And then even after all of that, it wasn't in real time. There was actually an 8-hour delay. So we know that we have banks actually putting in what I call speed bumps to really slow some of this down to ensure that we're really looking after ourselves and capturing the fraud and looking after our citizens. So this ultimately, that's kind of the be suspicious message that some of you might get. And this ultimately in the back end is sending a score to the issuing bank and the receiving bank to be able to let them know whether this is legitimate, whether they need more information, or whether they should send it through, as opposed to just putting a warning sign on everyone. So in closing, I think the question that was posed is difficult. Can we have a frictionless experience that's also secure? I would say no. I think there needs to be some friction, but I think the balance is how do we bring the friction down so that there is the right level of security, as opposed to having one imbalanced, which creates either a terrible customer experience or a very insecure infrastructure. So our closing, I think things are moving fast. We've heard that many, many, many times, and stay curious and speak to your partners to make sure you know what those fast trends are. What's a fad and what's a trend? And how do you actually get behind the trends and ignore the fads? Customers want their payments to be seamless and safe. They want them to be in the background. They're not in the business of understanding how payments work. They don't care. They just want to do stuff. And the third one is we're here to help. We're always here to have a conversation, and we'd love to support each of your businesses as you grow into the payment space and really scale, and really want you to take advantage of some of those opportunities at scale. Thank you. We have a couple of our team members here that are going to be floating around, so please look out for us in the break or during lunch. We look forward to having a chat.